like to welcome everybody here this evening to the October the 28th, 2025 Big Picture Ag Pros Call. Appreciate you guys coming in this evening. I know a lot of us are getting harvest wrapped up, or actually this evening there's quite a bit of rain kind of moving through the Midwest a little bit. So some opportunities, guys, got a little break maybe. But did want to take excuse me, just a few minutes to share a little bit. We are here several of us are here in Humboldt, Tennessee. Really happy tonight that while I'm down here, was able to get Josh and Phillip to join us for the call. We have another individual. So I guess maybe first question for everybody, did any of you have an opportunity to watch the podcast on YouTube that was put out a few days ago with Josh and Phillip? And you guys can unmute and just chat. That's fine.
Yes.
Did you?
Yep. I was eating supper. Yeah.
All right.
Good. How'd they do? What did they think about their first podcast?
Well, I don't know. I guess I'll let Josh or Phillip answer that.
It's not so much what we thought about it; it's what you guys think about it. We're open to criticism. That was our first one we had done. Mike or Alex being the host on it.
That was Mike that time.
Yeah, that was Mike. Alex didn't come out till the second episode, but we're open to anything that Mike could help us do better. So any input you guys have, we're listening.
So maybe go ahead and share real quick, Josh or Phillip, if you would, kind of what your plans are as we kind of launch into more consistent podcasts.
Yeah, so our first schedule will be 9 podcasts between October of 2025 and July of 2026. And the schedule consists of people that are in our network that are either world record yield holders, dealers, distributors, to create an awareness and show that we actually do have that web of network throughout farming, row crop here in the US, and how guys see, okay, well, hey, this success is working here, this is working there, really just to bring awareness. We're not necessarily on there to promote product or sell product. It's what we're trying to do to help the farmers, which everybody on here has farmed or is farming, how we can help the farmer succeed. And in turn, that's how really everyone succeeds, because the backbone of the US market-wise or anything is agriculture. So how can we continue to push forward and help the farmers be successful and profitable throughout? Yeah, in turn, once awareness is created, products will get involved as people reach out and say what's going to happen. As far as what happens after these 9 episodes, we really got to see what happens on this first slate of schedules. But yeah, it's just awareness, bringing more things to the forefront, maybe tackling some hard to swallow pills that, you guys know most of what we do is trying to be in tune with what's happening, but we kind of got to shake things up because we're being shaken up in the industry right now. So there may be some, do you pick the blue pill or the red pill, like the Matrix, of, hey, we got to pick a side of the fence to be on. So there may be some things of saying, well, hey, I've never heard those guys say that, but we can always say we're at a crossroads with what's happening, but really farming is super stretched right now. If you look at it like a rubber band, it could be close to snapping for a lot of people.
Yeah. This is a topic that we've kicked around quite a bit in the past. I know Josh and I have had a lot of conversations for a couple of years, and Phillip, about trying to launch something like this. So I have to say, I'm super excited about where it's going, that we're getting this off the ground. Um, and I guess I'd maybe offer a quick opportunity. Josh and Phillip, do you think we can trust Mike or Alex or whoever that is that's on tonight to share a little bit more of their background? Let everybody that's here kind of know a little bit about yourself, Mike, if you would.
Sure, happy to do it. So my name is Mike Rother, not Alex Loams. Alex Loams is a character who I trotted out terribly unsuccessfully the other day. I grew up farming and ranching in eastern Colorado. We were primarily a cow outfit who also farmed a little bit. Farmed until, I don't know, 5, 6, 8 years ago, something like that, when my uh, family things happen like family things tend to do. And now I'm retired and just in the business of entertaining myself when Phillip and Josh will allow me.
So, Mike, you've been affiliated with Phillip and Josh. Actually, at this point, I'm just a little bit over 10 years being with Genesis Ag. I think you mentioned today that you're probably in that neighborhood or maybe just a little longer, I think.
Yeah, I think I might have maybe a year on you, Mark, but that's
Yeah.
about it. Um, Honestly, our level of experience, you probably outrank me now by seniority in that regard. I think one of the things when you and I first got to know each other was we both had a intense interest in learning more about products and how to make them work right. And here in the last several years, I've had a lot less pressing need to do that, and you've continued on.
Yeah. Yep. But I'm excited to have you kind of in the fold with this. If you guys have been able to watch it or watch them as in the future episodes, uh, just really excited to have Mike on the team with this. So,
I appreciate it. Thank you, Mark, and very excited to meet everybody involved.
yeah, because a lot of you guys at some point will cross paths with Mike, different meetings or different things that may be planned. So cool, very good. So let's jump in, I think, and maybe talk a little bit. We haven't had a chance. I kind of went by last month's meeting because everybody was getting into harvest. Everybody was busy. The weather was pretty good, and I uh, I just decided rather than trying to pull things together at that point, we would push it back. Uh, but now that we've gotten through the bulk of harvest, I guess maybe I'll just kind of share a lot of what I've been hearing from guys around my region. It seems like corn yields are down in most places 20 to 30 bushel for a lot of guys. That seems to be pretty common. Um, Guys that did not fungicide saw significant impacts. Uh, Soybeans were good, maybe not phenomenal for some folks, depending on if they caught some rain to finish out the crop. Um, Josh, Phillip, Mike, would you guys share a little bit maybe from other parts of your region, and we'll open it up for everybody else to, if anybody's got things they want to share. But if you guys maybe tell us what you've seen around a little bit more nationwide.
I think Josh and Phillip should probably go first. They have a much more of a hand in the pie than I do.
Yeah, from what I've seen, I've ridden in some combines, mostly in soybeans, about a month ago, but soybeans are down maybe 10% yield wise, just on average. Some areas still might have had better weather patterns than others that maintain yields, but for the most part, I'm seeing a lot of guys that typically average mid-60s, averaging, they're saying 60, but it's probably 58, 59. Corn is, there's some spots it's the best they've ever had, but then their neighbor is 20 bushel off. So, me being who we are with Genesis and even some of the fertilizers that we offer, I'd like to think that it could have been things that that farm could have been doing the last 5, 6, 7 years to maybe make some changes to get through some stress periods. But for the most part, it seems like corn is anywhere from 20 to 30 bushel off. Talked to one of my better producers today that typically averages 240 to 260, looking at hoping his final number is 210. And that's over 3,500 acres of corn. So you start looking at those kind of numbers, and yeah, it's not terrible, but you start putting a pencil to it at $3.90, $4 corn at the elevator right now, and that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I recently spent a few weeks out helping some friends in the high plains that need help. I don't know if you guys know this, but labor at harvest time can sometimes be a little tight. And I'm not good at much, but I can sit in a combine. So I went out and did that. In the high plains of Colorado, you're looking at a 60 bushel average year to year, something like that. You can have good years, you can have 0 years. This was a good year. They averaged probably in that area, I'm going to say they're probably going to do 80 to 100, something like that as an average. There's going to be some guys cut some 140 bushel dry land. For that country, that's absolutely phenomenal. I have a friend in South Central Kansas around Hutchinson. They plant late, 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 and they do it on purpose. Uh, he said our yields are okay. They're a little lower than normal. And he attributes that primarily to being behind the worst of the southern rust pressure. They had quite a little southern rust pressure in the area. And of course, nobody wants to spend money when you're losing money on corn anyway. So those guys that were in early got hurt worse, it sounded like.
Philip, did you have any other thoughts?
I just, some of my guys I've worked with have called me and, they've had some pretty good results, with the program. This is second, third year producers. I'll give you the first guy out in the very far west. And that was their first, 300 bushel yield. I think he said they cut 338.
Good for him.
They put 160 units of N, and it was the first time the guy had ever cut over 300 bushels on the farm. Then you guys, let you guys know Daniel in Fisher in Pennsylvania, and he was giving me some really good numbers. They had went same genetics. They had went some non-GMO this year, and they had well exceeded some 300 bushel yields out there. And he was really excited about those type things. I can say for here in our area in West Tennessee, we had a really super potential until we got 78 days from the 1st of July forward without any rainfall. And Mike came for the first podcast and we finally got rain. But anyway,
That's what I do.
so, and I will tell you that we talked to the guy at the cotton gin today. He came down and talked to us, and cotton yields are dramatically off. And I said, well, what are guys going to do next year? And he says, well, they may not even plant. So that's just kind of a little bit of broad, I guess, brush stroke on what's happening in our industry, and everybody on the call knows and understands that.
So anybody else from my region got anything you want to talk about, chat about, share what you were seeing for the season?
So everything that I've seen this year is a lot of variety dependent. So yes, in Iowa we had rust, but some did spray for it. Some varieties it didn't bother whatsoever, or didn't bother it that much. So I had my one variety that the check strip I did, it did 270, and then 48 rows over it did 190. So variety dependent. So the chrome corn with more disease tolerance did way better than the high yielding corn that racehorse. It didn't like the rust very well. The fields that got sprayed, yeah, they did 250, 249, so an average year, but they had to spend whatever it was, $48 for that to keep it. Other reports. So yeah, seen on X, cotton, variety dependent. It just depends on what variety you had. One of them did good, one of them did bad. Weather, so just like here, the weather. So my Jamaica farm had, what did it have, 17 inches in July rain. Yeah, the beans didn't like that very well. Corn was okay with it, but the beans didn't like that very well. And it ended up being 60, while 4 miles east, it's 70s. So it depends on rain. Too much is too much.
Yeah, kind of an unusual situation. We're not used to seeing too much rain negatively impact our crop yields, but I think this was one of those years. Anybody else have any thoughts or things they want to share on what they saw in their area?
We are kind of in the same area, same boat. Our beans are pretty good. Corn's been down. Hoping to have the same average as last year and when we came through that drought on the corn. So kind of disappointing, but we'll take it, I guess.
Okay. All right. I guess John, Andrew, and Tom and Christian are going to stay quiet on that one. So. So I guess one of the things I would like to do this evening for those of you on the call, since we have an opportunity to have Phillip and Josh here with us, do you have any questions or thoughts or anything that you'd like to, with this opportunity to talk with them, any things that came up through the season for you, things that you've thought of, anything there that maybe open that window for questions?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a little bit. I know we had some, and I know you've talked about it, Mark, the nighttime temperatures being pretty high, but a lot of them, or some of them, are saying that with the smoke and some of the hazy days and all that stuff that we had, that maybe the photosynthesis at a certain time kind of took our crop that looked really, really good. I know that we got too much rain, but did more damage plus the disease than what we thought. Could that be true?
Well, I've seen it work both ways, Rob. I know you're a lot further south and west of where I've seen it be good or bad. It really depends from what I've seen the last 2 years, because my guys in Ohio and Michigan have faced the Canadian smog coming down. It really benefited in 2024 because it did reduce the temperature, even though it handicapped us on the solar radiation, the sunlight portion of it, it allowed the plant to perspire a little bit better and get through some of the extremes that we had during that time. But I've also seen the opposite effect of that, where it happened at the wrong time and did similar to what I think you're describing. And so I think there are factors that play into that, we want to look at any of that and say, well, hey, we had this is that factor. I think if we have healthy soil, healthy plant, and do the proper things to treat it nicely, much like how you and I would want to be treated, then I think we can overcome that. It's not as fixed as what we think it is. And I know Mark said this several times, and I'll kind of say it again. When you start looking at something as fluid as an ecosystem, like what we're working with, yeah, we're growing a plant on an ecosystem. It's not as fixed and as rigid as what we maybe have been led to believe over the last number of years.
I guess I'll throw just my 2 cents in on that question, Rob. And I can't give you an exact answer just yet. Andrew has got a weather station that he has solar radiation sensors on. Ryan also has one in Kansas. And I started looking at that a little bit a few weeks ago and kind of broke out, how many moles they'd accumulated. I didn't get a chance to really assess it precisely. It's a question I want to dig a little bit more into and hopefully be able to share some more things maybe about that even as we go into the winter. I think this crop had a lot of things that presented challenges. I do think the smoke could have been a bit of a negative for us. I think with the additional rain we probably had more cloudy days, even just in conjunction with that. That was the reason that by pollination, I was already starting to see a lot of separation in the plants. Plant to plant consistency wasn't there even at that point. So I think we just had a lot of things that were just little chinks in the armor on this crop this year. I think it's going to be hard to maybe pinpoint one exact one, but I think they're all factors to some degree. But a great question.
So there was a nighttime temperatures that are stayed above 70. Seemed to be every day was 1% yield loss. So last year we had 4 nights above 70. This year we had 24 above 70. So they're saying a 20-some% loss in yield from just the nighttime temperatures of nothing being done to it. So that would be a question. Is there something we can do about that help the plant get through that more from tassel? So from tassel on, we had 24 nights above 70 degrees. And they said we lost 24% of our yield due to that.
Well, and so that's a great question that you kind of bring up, Heath. You said, is there anything we can do about that? I think that's where we start looking at some of our stress mitigation programs and things like that. In going back and looking at if we use something like Immerse or anything else, especially if we had a side by side and we saw some sort of a yield impact from it. I look back at there from a couple of years ago when Brad had done that, and we saw that significant difference. We saw the change in the biomass map 2 months after the application, that crop persisted longer. So I think looking at some of those kinds of tools to say, did any of these applications help our plant persist longer and get a little bit better kernel fill as a result? So I think that's an avenue that we need to be pursuing a little bit more personally, and
That's
trying to
what I was
figure out how we can optimize some of those type things.
That's what I was looking at the MERS label before I got on here to see. Yeah, because Phillip talked about it at earlier for helping with stress. And I was trying to, so you brought up MERS, so
Mhm.
we did it later, be 12, 14, 16, right before tassel. Is that a possibility, or I don't, for nighttime temperatures to help with that? That's a question.
Philip or Josh, you got thoughts on?
My thought is, and I'll tell you what we're finding, and when I say we're finding, by digging roots, looking at plants, cutting plants open, et cetera. Where we've been using the immerse, we're keeping the phloem of the plant open longer. And I think anytime you can keep that phloem open longer, and we've cut the plants open on most all of you guys' farms and looked at that, I think that helps that with water nutrient uptake, because we dug these plants up and we saw the center part of the crown root system of it start sloughing off and not functioning. So where we've been using and keeping the proper mineral levels, and I will say mineral levels in that plant, we're keeping that phloem open longer. And so if I'm looking at stress mitigation, I'm looking at keeping that plant, the mineral content in that plant, at a somewhat optimum level or a higher level than normal for that plant to withstand that stress. So that's my take on it, because everywhere I went this year, there was stress, but where we were keeping that plant more open and keeping that phloem functioning, it turned out to be yield for us. And that's what we're looking for.
I think on my part, Heath, what I would say is I'm still, as far as the timing, when's the ideal time to do it? That's kind of one of the things that I want to discuss this winter, is how do we develop ways of testing different timings of applications, and so that we can figure out, can we do this application at the beginning of the stress, or is there a time in the growth cycle that's just, this is the time to do it? So great question. I don't know that we have an exact answer yet, but certainly something I hope that as a group we can dig into a little bit more. I don't know if Andrew wants to share it right now, but he had a pretty amazing response with Immerse this season in the opposite situation of too much water.
So I had I have a 40-acre farm that has a pretty good pond, and it sat water at least 2 inches deep, 3 inches deep for 72 hours, and then probably was saturated for another 3 days. Usually I've lost corn in that situation. That just, it drowns itself out and dies completely. We put an application of Immerse on, I can't remember, probably 3 to 4 days after the standing water left. is when I think Christian got there. I can't remember exactly, but you could actually see the waves of the drone where he flew. I think Phillip saw it too when we drove by my 40. You could like see the waves crossed where the drone flew. It definitely 100% at some level helped that plant sustain the stress of the anaerobic condition. And that part of the farm, I would have guessed would have been in that 220 to 230 range, and it was more like 260, 250 to 260 yield. I mean, we salvaged that whole, I don't know, 3-4 acres there. Had a really good yield off of it. I ended up that farm. I mean, this year we broke a record for that farm, corn on corn. So, yeah, I definitely feel like there was something there. Can I explain it to you? No, not really, other than what Phillip said. Maybe we started to breathe and uptake nutrients quicker on the rebound side, and it handled the stress or shut the plant down long enough that it could regain itself on the backside. So,
Okay, good deal. So more to come on that topic as we go through the winter, I think. Any other questions or thoughts anybody's got from this season that you might want to bring up real quick?
I do. It's kind of a weird question, I guess, but Phillip brought up the fact that, he's having some customers that he's worked with for a couple years. They're hitting 330 bushel averages or whatever. And I'm really curious because in the last 5 years, our corn in Northwest Iowa has died and dried down at the fastest rate that I've ever seen in my life. Like, we're combining 12 to 14% corn the last 2 years for sure. When October 15th.
Yeah.
I mean, we've never had, for 6 years now, we haven't had to dry a bushel corn out of the field. Is that a corn genetic change? Is question one. Two, is that hurting our ability to get higher yields due to extending grain fill long enough to get yields like you're talking about? And three, I mean, I feel like John and I are pretty God's country area, especially as you go west with the wind blown naturally well-drained soils. And 260, 270 stops most of our averages. I mean, how do we, I'm struggling to figure out how we get to 300, you know? Any insight on some of that? I mean, I know we're dying too fast. I know that, but I don't know how to keep it alive any longer. I'm curious.
Yes, you.
Well, listening to a lot of agronomists from your region, from that I-State region, that what really is the Corn Belt, everyone's wanting to blame it for the higher nighttime temperatures. That's what the buzz is out there. And so I'll come back to you, Andrew. Do you think that has been part of it the last 2 years? Your nighttime temperatures are actually not letting that plant rest and respire and have its quiet time, so to speak, before it has to kick back into gear when photosynthesis starts the next morning. So help me understand from your perspective, do you think that's an issue? Because you know your hybrids better than I do. And if you said, well, yes, that is something that we're having to start working with, is we're not getting that plant to rest at night. Okay, so then we've got a a line of thought, or we've got something to start working with or thinking about, okay, how can we, when I use the word trick, understand what I mean. How can we trick that plant or work with that plant with some nutritional benefit or a biological benefit or whatever that helps that plant rest and helps that plant, have that quiet time. Because from my understanding, the respiration rate of the crops due to the temperatures has been a much higher level over the last 2 years. So with that respiration rate raising to that level, is that circumventing some of the potential? Is that diminishing some of the potential that we might have to be able to deal with this? So I guess I have to, I'm going to ask you from a perspective of a hybrid specialist, what do you think?
I mean, I think you could maybe go down that road and point fingers in 2025. I think what Heath said is fairly accurate. I don't know if we had 24 days. We might have had 15 to 20 up here in Northwest Iowa of over 70 at night. But I know last year we had a very cool, good grain fill. I mean, I think Mark can attest to this. You came up here quite a few times and we just kept filling. Our milk line would not move. It just was stuck, between a third and a half forever and ever. And we had good yields, but like I said, last year we had better yields than in this year. But last year we were probably 250s, 260s, and this year we were probably 230s to 240s. We were 20 bushel off, and I could point at that. I mean, I think the problem that I'm struggling with is I can find a lot of blame to say why we're not moving the peg. Like, we had 45 inches of rain from April 10th to August 4th. We had unprecedented southern rust tar spot. We had hot nighttime temperatures. We had roots that literally pull out of the ground from the stripper rolls because there were no roots, because they just didn't have to go down because they had so much rain. It's not a nitrogen problem in Iowa. There's guys putting on more nitrogen than they would ever need in 100 years. It's probably some type of nutritional value. What John and I have seen from Revita N, Vita and Terra and Carbos is we have brought our lower yielding areas up. We are more consistent across the farm because we are changing the soil profile. But what you're saying and what I'm trying to understand, what I'm trying to hear is how do we're doing a good job, I think, at or working on soil consistency and health. But how do we work on late season after tassel plant health, nutrient flow, respiration, and just overall productivity? And I see what you're saying about nighttime temps. I agree this year, but I do not agree last year.
Okay, well, that answers that question, and I appreciate you filling me in there. So it has to be a case that the plant is exhibiting some type of hormone, whether that be abscisic acid, whatever it is that the plant is shutting down. So I guess that's something that we as a team, and I say a group, are going to have to sit and brainstorm maybe when we're at Big Picture Ag meeting in December. I think this is a topic for us. I really do, that we take maybe 15-20 minutes and we brainstorm in the room of options that we might have. It's that plant is thinking that it has to shut down for some reason. And we just have to hopefully be intelligent enough to figure out, well, this is what's stimulating that. Is it a nutrient deficiency? Is it a mineral? I'm going to say it's probably some mineral that we're missing that's not helping, that plant's not getting, so it's going ahead and shutting itself down. Those are things that I think we need to really brainstorm about.
So
I
let
don't,
me,
I don't have the answer. I mean, I'll tell you, I don't.
let me interject this. A year ago, when I passed through looking at some of John's corn, he was at 22.5% moisture, and you still couldn't really detect black layer. The corn was still maintaining quite a bit of green from the ear up at that point, and held it, I think, for another week or two before John got there for harvest. This year, John was doing a lot of really intensive looking at the crop, and I give him a lot of credit for this. But he called me on a Monday, and he said, and I purposely told him, I said, please try to be in your crop every couple days. Let's see when you hit black layer. You know, last year at Ames, Josh Thurman said that every day we can delay black layers, potentially 4 bushel yield increase. So, you know, hey, if we're keeping these plants alive longer, what are we able to do here? So John called me on a Monday, and he said, so we're at 26.5% moisture, still no black layer. On Friday, he called me and he said, we're at 22.5% moisture, and I can black layers showing up a little bit now. But that crop dropped 4 points of moisture in 4 days. How much did that hurt us at the tail end this season? You know, did that plant kind of hit the wall there? I think temperatures were a little warmer this year. We've all mentioned the disease issues and some of those things that I think added extra challenges for this crop to overcome. So I don't really know what answer there is in there. I think, Andrew, to speak to your question, you know, even 260 or 270 corn's pretty good corn, but it's not 338. So what might be some missing components that might allow us to make a substantial step? And I think I like Philip's idea. Let's put our heads together. Let's think about this. Let's kick ideas around, and come up with some plans of ways to attack this and see if we can make a difference. See what we need to do to get there. Whether it's nutrition, whether it's plant health, late season stay green, whatever. Let's see what we can come up with for an attack plan on it, if everybody's open to that.
I got a question again. So where were we getting this 330 bushels? Was that Idaho?
That was Idaho and Pennsylvania both.
Well, I was thinking about Idaho. You know, you're looking at a lot different elevation there compared to Iowa, most likely. And I think that would have something to do with, you know, with grain fill, maybe in a year like this. I guess that's what I was thinking about.
You're right, Tom. And I mean, I was out there this summer, you know, one time, one farm we were on, it was 109 degrees. Then we drove 50 miles and we got down, the temperature really fell. It was 103. So, yet that elevation still at night, you are correct. They do get down in the 70s. Even though those temperatures get that high. And in Pennsylvania, they had a pretty ideal growing season in Pennsylvania. So they had adequate water in July and August, and so everything kind of hit for them.
We've been seeing the same thing, with the corn getting really dry on us. So I agree with what he said. What is the test weight, and some of that'll be affected by all that too, wouldn't it? And my other question, this year we had a cool week, which was nice because we thought it'd slow the corn down and let it mature, coming off of some heat. But then I think the disease took that week and really ramped up. So I don't know if we think that hurt us too. I mean, it should have helped us, but then maybe kind of hurt us also.
I think one of the questions I would toss out is, did anybody do a second fungicide app on a crop? Because I think Rob, you hit on a very important thing. Some of my observations as I was in fields, especially later in the season, I mean, it almost looked like, the rust had started in the lower part of the plant. The producer had made an application, looked like it probably shut the disease down. But when you went into it a few weeks later, the top of the plant now all at once had active rust going in it, while the lower part of the plant, it wasn't active anymore. So it's almost like we had a resurgence of that pathogen. I don't know if any of you guys did second applications of fungicides. What did you see? I have had some reports from guys that did second applications, or 3 or 4 in some cases, and those areas have been better yielding for them this year.
Yeah, we did some second time. I think I've only done like one field. And I don't know that, so that I can really answer it yet. We really haven't got into the other. I have heard that south of us, maybe Omaha South, the second spring did help 15 to 20 bushels. Mm-hmm. But I also heard around our area or north that maybe the second spring did not help, but I can't answer on my own farm yet.
Okay. So yeah, I think those are some factors that we have to look at, and just keep in mind as we go forward, thinking about some of the very adverse conditions that our crops face this year, and what does that, what can we learn from those situations?
John has some data on 2-pass.
Yeah, I mean, we had one field where we sprayed early with, I wouldn't say early, I guess, but anyway, Veltima, and then I probably came back 10 days later and it just didn't seem like it killed it. So we sprayed again for the rust was in there. Would we use Delaro, I think?
Yeah.
So then I used Delaro, and I mean, it killed it the second time. I'm trying to remember the yield off the top of my head, but I want to say, because I had a couple checks in there, so we actually did checks on other products within those 2 spray areas. And where we double passed it, I think it was about 6 or 7 bushels more, maybe around 6. So I mean, I guess, yeah, did it yield more? Yeah. I mean, if I was paying a plane to do it instead of doing it with a drone myself, I mean, you really didn't gain much. I mean, you paid the plane guy and netted a bushel maybe. I mean,
right.
It was a point wetter where we sprayed it twice and where we didn't, but it's not like all of a sudden we had 290 corn either. So I don't know if that was our limiting factor, I guess, to me. I mean, that kind of proves it there. So That was the only one field I did spray twice. I mean, the other thing I noticed was on another field, we kind of split application because we were doing different passes, and so I had sprayed fungicide 2 different timings, and it seemed like the earlier time that I sprayed it out yielded the later pass of spraying it. So, I mean, maybe some of this is still just a timing thing. I don't know. There's just so many variables, but
On the fungicide front, I did about 15,000 acres roughly of fungicide with the plane and Haggy this year. And where we were early, and we didn't really mean to be, but before the rust was there, and we were kind of doing things right at tassel, not full tassel, but tassel, those guys had much better results yield wise than where we did it 7 days after full tassel, and there was a slight amount of rust that already had occurred. So I guess what I'm getting at is preventative was much better than curative this year. And even though we killed a lot of it and we had scars, there was definitely a yield bump, a yield difference in cases. It was 10 to 20 bushel, you know. But yeah, second passes. I did some second passes, kind of what John said. People said they thought they saw stuff, and people said they don't know if they really did. So a little inconclusive.
So what I would really love to do, guys, and we're kind of moving up on an hour. I don't know how much time you guys want to spend. I'm open to do whatever. One thing I'd really like would be if you guys could share with me, as you start analyzing your data, kind of what do you feel like you got from any of your, any fungicide applications? And if you can correlate your timing, let's look at what Andrew was talking about, was being early probably the better position to be. I think Phillip and Josh, you would probably echo that sentiment that you feel like being early and in a preventative position, especially with Instago, which we would probably talk about, is a better place to be. But with anything, let's try to, if you guys could put a little of that together, share it with me. Would love to include that in some of the big picture ag conversations, because I mean that's exactly how I want this group to work is, how can we find the optimum time to do these things when we have the best chance of success with any of our applications, whether it's a stress program, whether it's a disease program, whatever it is. Let's try to tune into that and see what we can learn. So any other quick thoughts or questions this evening?
Well, you brought up Instago. What are any results from the Instago for corn late season?
So I had one producer call, it was several weeks ago, and he said that he was almost reluctant to share with me, but he said, I chopped it up every way I could to try to confirm it. He said, but your Instago beat my Veltima by 8 bushel. I haven't had any other specific yield reports other than, a lot of guys who have done testing with it compared to other things, at least from a visual aspect, before I've gotten hard data on it. People have been pretty encouraged by what they've seen from it, just as the crop holding up and maintaining itself. So I don't know, Josh or Phillip, if you've had specific, yield data that come in yet. much.
No, I would say in 2 to 3 more weeks, we should have a lot of hard numbers. A lot of the plots we're doing with one of the groups we're working with, all of the plots for testing showed very strong visual responses. Um, I will say, kind of to Andrew's point, when you're talking about preventative, I would rather look at proactive in terminology to maybe say we're not going to get a disease. A lot of the guys that I talked to that sent me pictures, farms I was at this year at $4 corn, they waited too late till they already had the disease and then tried to treat it. In thinking about that, we know that we probably already lost in that because we let the plant get sick. It's much like, do we want to try to not get sick or wait till we get sick and then treat for ourselves? I think if we start looking at how would I treat myself versus my plant, it's let's do the things to not get sick. Too many people at $4 corn wanted that one pass deal. They tried to wait till the very last minute, and a lot of guys got burned by it. And I think, kind of to John's point, where the first time he sprayed, it almost didn't treat it, changed chemistries, went back and sprayed it again. The disease was there, if I'm understanding correct from what John was saying. It's so hard to combat once it's already there. Now, again, we don't have the luxury at $4 corn to go trigger happy with it and say, well, I'll do a pre-tassel, post-tassel, and brown silk. But if we can learn at $4 corn, it sure makes, if we ever see these days again, it makes $5 and $6 corn a lot more appealing to know how we can get bushels out of that.
We put Instago on all our corn this year, and as we scouted, it held up just like as good as all the other fungicides. I mean, it's still in the end the rust took it, but it was, so we were happy with it. My other question was, I think they said this earlier, that the defensive varieties in corn did better than the offensive this year, and the beans were the opposite. Like you would expect, the offensive yield better than the defensive. Is that, it's probably just the disease thing, or would it be more than just that?
Now, I would say that's more of a question for Andrew if he wants to throw in, because a lot of our thought process that we try to bring to you guys, not saying we don't care what you plant, offensive, defensive, or what labels on the bag, it's how we can affect that. And there's so many variables within each season that I can't tell you what to plant, but Andrew may have some things from the seed side that could shed more light on it for you.
Josh is throwing me under the bus here a little bit, but I would say in general, I know less this year after this year than I knew before. And I think that goes back to your point. The defensive corn hybrids, as you would call them, which are usually more solid root, solid stalk, plant health, late season stay green without maybe the top end per se. They seem to hang on to plant health and finish stronger, giving them a higher yield or a higher weight at the end of the day. Where a lot of these offensive products that I saw, they just couldn't handle the pressure and they couldn't handle the disease pressure, and their roots didn't develop due to the rain and so on and so on. So I think high nutrient nitrogen prima donna offensive corns struggled this year just because we had a lot of things that were challenging for them, where, like I said, the plant health, I don't know if you want to call that defensive or what, but the products that kept their stay green, the genetics that kept their stay green and kept that green in the stalk and kept that phloem open in that crown intact were the products that were just the best yield for sure. So.
You know, I think Andrew, one of the things you mentioned there, wild disease is probably the wild card this year that is easy to point our fingers at. There were a lot of chinks in the armor on this crop this year. It's been kind of interesting as we got into harvest, and I bumped into a couple of some of the other more local guys that I had been able to meet with, like in early August. And in particular, it was a couple of new customers. And as we were out in the crop, you know, this was right after USDA came out and said, "Oh, we've got a record crop. You know, this is going to be the best thing you guys have ever seen." And you know, I'd been seeing that plant to plant variability increasing and challenges coming, and looking at the, you know, the GDD charts, and probably a little more rain than we really needed on a lot of these crops. And I started telling guys, is like, I don't think this crop's going to be there. And I've had two of those clients come back to me in the last month and say, you know, when I heard you tell me that the 1st of August, I thought you were nuts. You know, that this crop, they said, I thought we had the best crop we were ever going to have in our life. And, you know, it's all down 20 to 30 bushel. And that's not to toot my own horn that I'm some sort of wizard, but being in your field and a couple of you guys that I work with here, you know, you kind of notice some of those things going through your season too. So I think it really reflects on the fact that the more we're in our fields, the more we're paying attention to what our crop's telling us, there really is something to that. And I think that's where, you know, whether you call them defensive hybrids or workhorses or whatever terminology you want to use, you know, they just had a little bit tougher stance to survive through some of what this season presented. So, and we all know that very good odds that next year will be different than this year. So how does that all play into that too? So, any other quick thoughts or questions? We're a little over an hour. I don't want to drag everybody out too long, but you know, if there's any burning questions, want to let you toss those out. And certainly probably opportunities. Hopefully we can get Josh and Phillip back and do more of this in the future too. So any other quick questions?
I just had one follow-up question. It seems like we didn't have as many bean diseases this year. Why would that have been compared to what we had in the corn, compared to even like last year, in our area at least?
So in this area, we did have white mold again and sudden death syndrome, but it wasn't as widespread because the weather changed. It cooled off. So the nighttime, when it started firing up, the nighttime temperatures dropped to below 65, I think, and slowed it down. So we did have white mold. I sprayed Instago, so my field, I didn't have any white mold whatsoever with the Instago. So my beans this year were in the high spot for white mold and whatever else they wanted to throw at it, and there was not a lick of disease up there. But they were a defensive bean this year, so they yielded less. But that's what you got to make a choice. What do you want?
I think maybe, Rob, for me, the other thing to look at in that question is what soybean diseases do you typically face? I know you guys, I think last year had some significant issues with soybean diseases. What diseases are they? When do they impact the plant? Because a lot of these things, the white mold, the sudden death, they actually infect the plant early in the season, but they don't show up as symptoms until later. So I think we have to kind of step back and analyze that part of the question initially and say, what diseases would we have thought we would have had? A lot of us did get kind of dry through August and, in September to finish the soybeans out a little bit. Were the weather conditions then conducive for any of the late season diseases that we might have? I think it's more the timing of when those diseases impact the crop as much as anything. But would love to, dive into that a little bit more with you and see if we can assess that, because that's a great learning opportunity right there as well. To say, okay, when did we have conditions conducive for the disease to proliferate?
Did you put a date in December of when we're having this meeting? Did I hear that?
Well, I was going to make that announcement here as we wrap the meeting up. So, any other questions? We'll open it up for one more question if there's any more out there. Okay, well, so yes, I'll make the final, or well, not the final announcement. We made a final decision, I guess, on when we're going to do the big picture ag meeting. And actually, it's been adjusted a little bit due to some scheduling challenges, but it's going to be Monday, December the 1st. Is going to be the big picture ag meeting this year. Trying to move it up earlier in the season to get you guys some more information earlier in the year as you're making plans. And it's going to be a one-day meeting in Kansas City. Not going to inundate you with too much of a fire hose of information this year. We are going to talk some Genesis products in the context of it, but the main focal point, with Big Picture Ag of Be Your Farm's Expert, we're going to talk a lot about identifying your limiting factors. And there's an S on that, because there is more than one factor that's limiting your crop yields. And we're going to talk about building a plan to address these kinds of things. So it's going to be kind of hands-on. Might even be some things for you to think about and ideas to bring with you to the meeting. I think Josh is going to be able to be there, still talking with Phillip to see what his availability might be for that. But again, going to be some product information in conjunction with that. Kind of looking at, since that's a Monday meeting, if any of you guys that might be traveling in from a distance, if you want to come in Sunday evening, there'll probably be some sort of an evening welcome. Trying to get my hands wrapped around that. So there's going to be a few more details come out very soon. There might be a couple of other things to entice you to come, but would really encourage you guys to mark your calendars for December the 1st. Hopefully that'll work into everybody's schedule before we get into the holiday season, before we get into calving and some of those kinds of things. So anyway, there will be more information coming out on that very soon too. So, all right, any other thoughts or questions this evening? Comments before we wrap things up?
Thank you, Mark.
Hey, I thank you guys. I appreciate you guys showing up, your questions, your time. This is great stuff, and I think it'll be helpful for all of us. So would like to thank Phillip and Josh and Mike for for spending a little time with us again this evening too. And with that, we'll let you guys go this evening. And don't be afraid to shout if you've got any questions or any results that you want to share with me.
Yep, thanks everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, and I appreciate everybody, the questions, because those questions make us all better. And it's like it gets us to looking at this to see, okay, is there an answer here, and what that answer might be.
All right. Good night, guys. Thanks again.